Welcome to Nashville Realtors podcast with Brandon Hanna Properties, discussing everything you need to know for Nashville real estate. And here are your hosts for Nashville's Realtor, Brandon Hanna and Alec Lehman, your experts in everything Nashville real estate.
Welcome back to the podcast with Brandon Hanna, Alec Lehman, and Brandon Hanna Properties. Thanks for joining us. This is episode 2. We are going to dive into a little bit more of what we talked about last week. Last week's topic was real estate investing. We hit high-level topics. What's it look like to invest in real estate? Who can invest in real estate? What are the types of investments? Today, we're going to have a little more fun and dive into something that's really interesting. In fact, it's a topic across the country. Short-term rentals. People hear the term Airbnb a lot. So think about vacation houses, lofts in town, downtown, big cities, cabins in the mountains, you name it. But short-term rentals is going to be a really fun topic.
It is really fun, and we were talking about it's kind of like the jazzy part of real estate investing. It can be really fun. It can also be really hands-on, and it can be time-consuming. But if that's something that you're interested in doing, then this could definitely be for you. So today we're going to kind of outline some of that. We're going to start off with kind of the risks that go into it. And then we're going to go into types of different real estate short-term rentals, and kind of what our clients are doing and what we've seen to kind of be successful. So then we'll go on to kind of give you some examples. Then we'll move on to kind of where you start. So because it's a lot, it's almost like drinking through a fire hose with some of this stuff. So we're going to try to outline it for you, make it super clear.
It is a lot. All of you probably thought about when you went to stay in a big city or a vacation getaway, like you probably rented on Airbnb or VRBO or one of these places. And so thinking, how do I get one of those?
Mm-hmm.
That was really cool. That was a great beach house. Or that was a really cool loft. I want to be that guy that owns it and have somebody else pay for it.
Exactly. When you click submit payment, and you're paying $1,000 a night, you're like, wait a second, who's getting that? Where's that going to? I don't know that as well for myself.
So we'll start with risks. You mentioned risks.
Mm-hmm.
And with real estate investing, any types of investing, there are risks involved, no doubt. And that's when you sit down with us, our clients can all testify. That's probably the biggest topic that we talk about and continue to talk about through the process. From the first time we sit down till the very end, we're going to be analyzing risk, talking about risk, finding out from you what your appetite is for risk, and making sure that you're in a great financial spot with our team, your mortgage person, your title person, all the people that help us through the process, making sure that everything is checked so that you're still in a great spot and accomplish your goals at the same time. So having said that, long-term rents, like let's say you buy a single family home and you want to get a tenant for 12 months and they are there, they're planted, that is one of your least risky types of real estate investments. I mean, there are some commercial options, things like that aren't very risky. When you have a long-term tenant, they're locked in for a while. You kind of know what your rent's going to be each month. You know what your costs are. There's not a lot of variables. So think about with short-term, your tenants are renting for 1 night, 2 nights, 3 nights, maybe 7 nights if you're lucky. That's a long booking in short-term world.
Oh, that's great.
So you got to think, all right, where's my monthly payment going to come from if I'm booking out by the day? So, and the second part of the risk is with a short-term rental, these are properties that are secondary to your primary residence. Think about it like this. If the economy goes down, people need a place to live. So the single family house in the middle of Franklin, Tennessee, where we live, or in the middle of your small suburb town outside of your city, that's probably going to stay rented. They have a job, they need a place to live, but what they may not do is vacation that year. They may not go to the beach if they lose their job, or they may not go skiing if they lose their job. So one of the first things to drop would be short-term rents. And that is one of the things that makes this significantly more risky than a long-term type of real estate investment. Okay, so we've kind of gotten, that part is something that we'll talk about the whole way through the process, but then you think about there is, with more risk, there generally is more reward, and that's the fun part.
Exactly. And I think, staying on the topic of risk as well, that's our job as real estate professionals, right? Is to find you, even though it is more risky than a long-term lease or renting or whatever, it's our job to come up with something that minimizes that risk, even though it's higher than others. So we've found a market over, in East Tennessee, the Great Smoky Mountains. That's been a great place for us to send clients because of the Four Seasons. It's one of those things that, if you were to go out and, as opposed to like maybe buying a beach house, when do people go to the beach? When it's hot outside. During the summer, maybe spring and fall kind of mixed in there as well. But during the winter months, a lot of times people aren't going to the beach as much. So, we basically like to find markets that have those 4 seasons of rentals that people, no matter what the season is, they're wanting to go to that place. And so that's kind of what we found in Gatlinburg, Sevierville, Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, over in the Great Smoky Mountains. It's been a great place for us to send our clients.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So, that market is one of the top 5 short-term rental markets in the country.
Because of that, right?
Because of
the 4 seasons.
There's very little down season. In fact, it's arguable that there is no down season. Mm-hmm. But that is one of the things, just like you said, Alec, that makes short-term rentals a little more risky. Mm-hmm. If it is a seasonal property, a ski lodge, beach house is what you typically think of. In the winter, the ski lodge is going nuts, and maybe they have some good summer activities, but typically rents go down in the off season, and the same with the beach. And those off months can really impact your overall income for the year. Mm-hmm. Everybody watches HGTV. There's a show called Vacation House for Free. Caught my interest. I had a client tell me about it, and I was like, that's an interesting way to say it. So from the real estate side of things, we have seen how you can have your investment property pay for itself. Pretty cool thing, whether it's a beach house, ski lodge, cabin, or even a loft in downtown somewhere.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, we've seen it. We have examples of tens of clients of ours that have gone through that. So
that's right, and that's been the most interesting thing, is watch them get to the point where their rents are helping them break even and cover their payment to pay for that property. Mm-hmm. Okay, so your investment value in a scenario like that is more long term. Because if the tenants and the rents are just paying for your monthly payment, then you're not really making a whole lot while you own it. Mm-hmm. But what they are doing is they're paying down your mortgage each month, and hopefully the property's appreciating if you're in a good spot and you got a good buy. Yeah. So then when you go to sell it, 5 years, 7 years, 20 years, whatever it is, your mortgage is going to be lower, so your equity has grown, and hopefully the property's appreciated, so you end up in a great spot. We have a client in Destin I want to talk about too. So.
No, and with that as well is, with those 2 factors, they're paying down your mortgage, maybe it's appreciating, and a lot of times people don't even think about the personal use. If it's in one of those vacation rentals, or a vacation destination, the mountains, ski lodge, beach house, something like that, you've got a free place to go with you and your family, maybe pay cleaning, when you guys leave. But other than that, then you have a place that you go with your family, and that's very valuable, at least to me and my family. So
a lot of fun. Yeah. In fact, I think that's what pushed me off the ledge for our first one personally, that my wife and I bought. We went to the Smoky Mountains since I was a kid. My family would take us. It was an easy drive, short trip from Nashville. There's all kinds of things to do. We have young family. 4 kiddos, and so it was easy. And then we started thinking, that's maybe an interesting investment because it's always busy here. So then started looking into it, and it ends up as a great place to own and invest. And I'm not saying it's the only one. The market has gone up really high this year, so it's more of a seller's market than it had been. We helped a few clients purchase second homes and investment properties up there in the last couple of years. Some of which decided to sell because the properties, they were doing great, they're renting well, they loved it, but the properties had appreciated so much, they were able to sell, make a profit, and then take that money and reinvest it into something else. And so on a later episode, we're going to go into a 1031 tax deferred exchange, which is what some of these clients use. to not pay capital gains tax on the money they made from the sale of those properties. And we're going to have a really cool gal on with us from a 1031 company to help answer some of these questions, take us through the nuts and bolts. So stay tuned for that. Really
oh, exactly. I know we've got 2 examples of interviews coming up here as well on the podcast that will have personal testimonies of people that have done this and experienced success doing it. So okay, so I come to the office. I say, okay, this is for me. We go over the risks. I say, yes, let's do it. Where do we start? What are we looking for? Let's take the Smoky Mountain. It's overall. Let's just take it overall. What are we looking for? Where are we looking? And where do we even start when it comes to purchasing a home and getting started with this?
Okay, so you sit down first day. I want to find out how much you'd like to invest. That's going to help determine what your down payment is. If it's going to be something in your hometown where you live, the down payment's going to be a little more than if it was a second home option. A lot of lenders categorize second homes by at least 50 miles from your primary home. So if you bought something at the beach or in the mountains, then second home becomes an option.
So instead of the 20% down that you would typically have to do for an investment, you could actually qualify for only putting 10% down on a second home, which obviously is a huge savings.
In one of our episodes, we'll do an interview with a lender talking about all those options, because it's really lender specific, buyer specific, but that's exactly right. So you could get in with only 10% and get into your first investment property, which is really cool. The next thing we look at is, so you tell us how much you'd like to invest, we'll sit down and look at it, and then tell us what your likes and dislikes are. I had a family that came in and they loved going to the lake. That's all they wanted to do. Every summer, 2 weeks out of the summer, they would go to the lake with their kids, hang out. They didn't care about the beach, they didn't care about the mountains, but that's what they wanted. So, okay, well, how can we find something that will help pay for itself, or at least offset your costs, rather than just going to buy something on the lake that you only use a couple times a year? Well, let's get you in a spot where you can maybe get some overnight rentals coming in from it. So one of the things that we looked at was the city where the lake that they wanted to be around was in, because each city, each county may have guidelines and laws regarding or prohibiting short-term rentals. And Nashville is where we are now, is one of the
They're so sweet. They're so sweet. They take care of us. They love short-term rentals.
Our hotel industry is really big here.
That's right.
And they don't want any competition. So, which has made it really difficult. So in Nashville, in Metro Nashville, you have to apply for a short-term rental permit, and only certain types of properties in certain locations even qualify, then you still have to apply. So if you didn't know what you were getting into, and it's been really unfortunate, I've heard horror stories where people have gotten into properties thinking that they could do a short-term rental, so they paid a premium for them, found out they couldn't get a permit, and now they've overpaid for a property that they thought they could rent out. So you got to make sure you kind of know what you're getting into. Once we do that, we find the property that they want. Then we'll start analyzing, what do those rental numbers look like? And we have a whole slew of resources to help determine how much is that house going to rent for on a short-term situation, on VRBO or Airbnb or TripAdvisor. Sometimes we can use, and we'll come back to maybe your specific example of the property you own, because each client's going to be different. I've got some that are very hands-on. They want to manage it themselves. They want to be in touch with the cleaners themselves. They want to talk to the tenants themselves. And that's great. It can be a really profitable thing if you have the time and resources to do it. But we have other investors that, and I just want to be hands off.
Exactly. And they're willing, and they're willing to pay a little bit more, maybe pay for a property manager that would take 20 to 30%, as opposed to maybe somebody that is paying 10%, but they've got to be a little bit more hands-on. So again, it kind of just depends.